Keith responded that way positively, did that scare you or give you momentum?
Yes, both. Because I mean, someone who's always been creative, there is this moment of creation, and once the thing is done, it's like a little baby bird, and you're like, whew, and then it like fly, and it's like I don't know if it's gonna fly or if it's gonna fall. I have no idea. And so when you get a little bit of validation, you're like, okay, that's weird because I thought this was good, but other people seem to be connecting with this. And it is both exhilarating and terrifying. What if, that was the only good thing I've ever written? And it's this one little poem in a collection and everything else I create just sucks. I'm grateful for the guys at Dead Reckoning for seeing something that maybe I really wasn't willing to see myself at the time. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to take the analogy a little bit further, like you got to put the bird in the air, whether it flies or whether it falls, right?
Exactly.
Is that much of it? That's not much of a change for you, right?
My name is Kerry Kite. I used to load bombs in the Air Force, and now I'm a writer, a filmmaker, and an entrepreneur. Through using the post 9/11 GI Bill to go to college, working hourly jobs to pay the bills, and freelancing my way into a career, I've studied what it takes to successfully transition from service to civilian, and that study has become a conversation. On this podcast, I speak to other veterans, successful artists and entrepreneurs about their transition, what they did well, where they failed, what they learned, and most importantly, how they applied their skills.
Episode 151 features Steve Callahan, a Marine Corps veteran and the author of Sometimes I Go Away, the latest from Dead Reckoning Collective.
Welcome. This is Veteran Made.
Our merch store is live at store.veteranmadeproductions.com. Grab hats, t-shirts, and hoodies in both performance and tri-blend cotton fabrics. Use code VM-5OFF for 5% off your purchase. Veteran Made is also sponsored by GoPills, a military-grade nootropic that contributes to brain health over time. Use code VM15 at checkout for 15% off. I get my collagen protein from Bubs Naturals, where you can use code VETERANMADE, all one word, at checkout for 20% off your order. We're also proud to partner with True Made Foods, which makes condiments free from added sugar and sweetened with real foods. Use code VET at checkout for 15% off. We love socks in this house. I get my wife new socks every Christmas. More importantly, we love American-grown and made socks. Use code VETERANMADE15 at rucksocks.com for 15% off. And lastly, I end my day with Rack Out from Bravo Actual to maintain quality sleep, resulting in a well-rested body and mind. Use code VETERANMADE with a space between the words at checkout for 15% off your order. Enjoy the episode. Well, good morning from the great state of Ohio for me. Good morning from the Commonwealth of Virginia. Steve Callahan, welcome to Veteran Made.
Thanks, buddy.
Been a long time coming. Long time chats happening on Instagram and text and phone and all that stuff. So I'm stoked that we're having you on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This could very easily be the Long Legs podcast, but for the sake of the listener, the Long Legs podcast.
Oh yeah,
we just talk about
wait to talk about movies so that we don't just
that's the whole conversation. If not,
yeah, this just turned into the P. Abate Film Club podcast. Real,
that's right. Yeah.
All right, dude. So, kind of speaking of movies, I do want to start with one. We're here talking about I go away sometimes.
Sometimes I go away.
Sometimes I go away. Excuse me. Sometimes I go away. Yeah, that's right. I typed that wrong in my notes. Sometimes I go away. Got it. Dead Reckoning Collective's latest, authored by you, edited by Matt Smythe, a friend of the podcast as well.
Yeah.
So we'll dive into the whole thing, but I want to start with one poem. You have no idea. I've got it on my iPad over here because I don't have the physical copy yet, but in the copy that I have, it's page 127. I don't know if that's what it's going to be in the final. You probably have no idea what I'm even going to do here or like what you did to me.
Okay.
126 on mine. The poem Frozen.
Okay, so I'm gonna this might be a little embarrassing. I notoriously do not title my poems, and I titled them for this collection. So I don't know what that one is. What's the first line?
Let it go, let it go.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
So all the parents in the audience are gonna be laughing.
Yeah.
So it's really funny because there's two references that I noticed immediately. My daughter is 5. As of this airing, I will have had another brand new newborn daughter, but my first daughter
Sweet.
is 5, and she is has been obsessed with Frozen her entire life. Got a hold of Elsa and got a hold of Anna and will not let go. We have multiple action figures and Barbies of those two.
Yeah.
They're in the bath, they go to the pool, they're in the basement, they're in a room, they're everywhere. And then, so as I'm reading, I'm like, oh, it's titled Frozen, and I'm reading, oh, let it go, let it go. And as I'm reading in my head, I'm saying, let it go, let it go.
Right.
So I'm like, I reset, I go back to the blank page, I come back to the right page, and I try to read it in a cadence that I thought you might have or whatever. Then I get to the middle, and you've got a Sabbath reference. The generals no longer gathered in their masses.
Yeah.
My daughter's also obsessed with superheroes, watches Spidey and Amazing Friends, and then Iron Man shows up in like season 2 or 3, and she's like, hey, are there any Iron Man songs? And I'm like, you're goddamn right.
Hell yeah.
So I throw a Sabbath on, and we listen to Iron Man. And she loves it. It's like 5 minutes long. The next song that plays is War Pigs, and that song's like 7 minutes long. And we're listening to it. She loves it, and so she's rocking out. And so we kind of go back and forth between all the Disney princess songs, and then I've got her going on Sabbath and some of these others. So I'm sitting here reading this collection, and I get like kind of towards the end. I guess it's like, yeah, it's almost like the probably fifth or last poem, and I'm reading Frozen and then Sabbath. Anyway, so knowing that you're a movie fan, and I figured you'd get a kick out of that.
Oh, dude, I am a movie fan and a music fan, and I think poetry is music. So whenever I have and Black Sabbath is, I would say, top 3 for me. So whenever I get a chance to reference Black Sabbath, I will do it.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. I love it.
Love it. That's so good.
Yeah, so I guess for those who don't know who you are, tell us who you are, where and when you served, and then we'll jump back into the collection.
Yeah, so Steve Callahan. I currently live in the great Commonwealth of Virginia, but I'm originally from New Jersey. I was a reservist with 225, 2nd Battalion, 25th Marines. I was an infantryman by trade and spent most of the first half of my enlistment as a reservist, doing the 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in the summer drills. And then in 2018, my company got deployed to Helmand Province, Afghanistan. And I was there from September of 2018 to April of 2019. And then came home and did the rest of my enlistment. As a reservist, I had put in a package to transfer to go combat controller for the Air Force. And I had everything lined up. My recruiter was like, yep, you're PT stud. We'll get you signed up. I was like, so good, dude. And then this little, I don't know, you might not have paid attention to the news, but there was this little event going around called COVID, and that kind of shut down everything. And then my recruiter ghosted me, and I checked out of the military shortly after that. And I've been a civilian ever since.
Dang, dude. Dang. I did not know that aspect of your story. There's a handful of threads I want to pull on, where we have some other similarities through some of the work here, but I did not realize that we shared that. As you know, I went through INDOC,
oh yeah,
via PJ, and then got injured after selection, at the end of selection, knocked out of the pipeline, and served in the conventional side of the house, which was like kind of my first experience with this idea of transition, and kind of like where that journey started. As I look back, how did that affect you, and what made you want to do that at that time of the war? 2019 is like getting up, right? Obviously you didn't necessarily know that this was going to happen.
Yeah, I think so. I had always wanted to do more. And I originally had talked to my CO. There is a reservist to ANS pipeline that you can go through to MARSOC. And so I talked to my CO and I talked to my ex-fiance at the time, and we were like, hey, I want to go do this. She was like, I don't want to be active duty. So I found out that you can do Air National Guard, and go combat controller. You could do TAC-P, you could do a PJ as a reservist. And I was like, well, I feel like I could do more than conventional line infantry. I'd always been kind of a rapscallion, I think, within the line infantry. And so the soft mindset and lifestyle, I felt like, okay, that's something I can sort of gel with. And it was difficult. I mean, it was a difficult sort of couple months of feeling disillusioned with the military in general. Like I put my time in, even as a reservist, like whatever, not much time, but still put it in. Right. And, I kind of felt burned a little bit, and I was very disappointed, but looking back, I don't think my life could have gone any other way. I think that's why hindsight is 2020, right? Like I couldn't imagine the life I'd be living and not having the, what would be the word? I don't mean it like it's going to sound, but the blessings that I have now, right? I wouldn't have that if I was still in. So I'm grateful for the life I'm living now, and I've come to terms with everything.
I'm glad you say that. I think it's something that we need to say more. It's something I've gotten more comfortable saying recently, in the last probably year or so, because like I said, for me, I that was my first real taste of transition and the difficulty of transitioning in the military. Going from, you talk about that kind of rapscallion view, right? Like the I can only speak for the Air Force, not the other branches, but like there's kind of a California surfer vibe to every dude that serves in AFSPEC war, it's called now, even if they're from the Midwest or the East Coast or like wherever they're from. There's kind of that vibe. And I grew up in Southern California, grew up surfing and snowboarding and scuba diving and free diving and cliff jumping and all that great stuff, and so like I really vibed with the vibe. And then you get over to the conventional side of the house and you're like, oh man, this is not what I signed up for. I want to do this. And then for me in my own personal journey, it was like, okay, maybe that's what I needed, right? Maybe that's what I needed, was to kind of level set that a little bit and maybe find a little bit of an equilibrium. And so, not to make the podcast about me, but I kind of went on that journey. And as I look back now, I got out 15 years ago, coming up in October. I look back and I have the exact same thought that you do, which is like, man, I don't know what would have happened had I made it through selection, made it through the pipeline and served in that capacity. But I'm actually kind of glad that I didn't, because everything that I've done now, good, bad, and ugly, was built off of that foundation. And I think we need to give ourselves and each other a little bit more permission to speak that way, to acknowledge those thoughts, the complexity of those thoughts and those feelings. That's certainly not how I feel every single day of my life, but like generally that's how I feel. And I think that kind of mindset like runs through your work, at least in this collection. That idea of wrestling with the complexities of existence, service, position, like all of those things. Was this collection born to be a collection, or was this pulled from lots of different places?
So both. A few of them are poems I had already written. I have a poetry page that I have not posted on quite some time on Instagram. It's called The Ashes of Helmanding, if anyone's interested. And so a couple of those poems, that's where I started putting poetry out. I had never put anything to my name. And originally when I started the page, it was anonymous. I had nobody, I didn't say who I was or anything like that. I was just putting out poetry. And so I had a couple bangers that I thought I was like, these are pretty good. Like, I'll see what the guys at Dead Reckoning think. And this is before I met Keith and Tyler, and I really had at that time, a tangential relationship to Mason and a lot of the guys at Dead Reckoning. And so I was like, well, whatever. Like these seem like a bunch of good old boys, so I'll send them what I got. And so I sent them about 5 poems, and Keith responded like, "This is something we can get behind. Can you send me more?" And I was like, "Absolutely." And then so I think there's 10 of them in there that I had previously written before the collection, and then the rest of them were written specifically for that idea.
When Keith responded that way positively, did that scare you or give you momentum?
Yes, both. Because I mean, as someone who's always been creative, there is this moment of creation, and once the thing is done, it's like a little baby bird, and you're like, whew, and then it like fly, and it's like, I don't know if it's gonna fly or if it's gonna fall. I have no idea. And so when you get a little bit of validation, you're like, okay, that's weird because I thought this was good, but other people seem to be connecting with this. And it is both exhilarating and terrifying because I'm like, well, you liked Frozen. Well, what if you hated the other ones? What if that was the only poem you wrote? What if, that was the only good thing I've ever written? And it's this one little poem in a collection and everything else I create just sucks. And I think there's that fear always. But I think creation the baby bird's got to fly. And I'm grateful for the guys at Dead Reckoning for seeing something that maybe I really wasn't willing to see myself at the time. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to take the analogy a little bit further, like you got to put the bird in the air, whether it flies or whether it falls, right? Like
exactly.
I was watching some IG reel the other day where Willem Dafoe was talking about overcoming imposter syndrome on a set, right? And he's acting and he's like, just try a scene badly. Like if you don't have if you can't find, actors have their own language, right? Like if you can't find the motivation or you can't find the choices, and I mean that technically, like in the scene, an actor is looking for their character's motivation and the character needs to make choices, right? And so the actor needs to embody those choices.
Right.
He's like, just try to do it badly. Just do the scene. The words are there. The screenwriter wrote it. The director and the camera are there. Like, just try to do it badly and start there, right? And it's this idea of like facing the blank page. It's like, well, just put shitty words on paper and then rearrange them or erase them and rewrite them or strike them through and rewrite them or do whatever. But you got to put the bird in the air and it might fly and it might fall. What's beautiful about a collection is that, like, yeah, of course, I didn't love every single poem that's in this collection, right? Nobody is going to love every single poem that's in the collection. But it's the volume of the work is what creates the pockets of greatness or the pockets of even things that people can like relate to. There's plenty in here that I can't relate to and I just appreciate and move on to the next page. But then like a few of them like really grab me. In this case, a lot of them grab me. I'm not trying to like.
You're like, 2 of them were great.
I can't compliment you. I just mean that like. I mean that in the sense of like you can't be thinking about what somebody's going to think about every single poem, right? Like it works as a cohesive piece. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think I read something similarly on Instagram the other day, and it was the water doesn't get warmer while you wait for it to jump. The water doesn't get warmer while you wait to jump in, right? And the idea is, you kind of got to put the bullshit. Can I swear?
Yeah, of course. It's a military podcast. Of course you can say whatever the fuck you want.
Okay. You can kind of put all that bullshit aside and say, well, it is what it is. And I'm going to do it. And if it sucks, if I fail, at least I tried. Right. And that was something I think for me, whether I write, 150 best-selling novels and I'm the next Stephen King, or I'm a one-hit wonder and I've written one poetry collection for Dead Reckoning, my kids one day, I can hand them this, right? When they're, alive and old enough and existing, and here you go. This is my poetry collection. Like, I wrote this, your dad wrote this. And
Yeah.
if you work hard at something and overcome your fear of rejection, and if you push through all those hurdles, you can have something like this in your hand.
Yeah.
And I think that's the whole point.
Well, I mean, the water's a great analogy too. It's pool season. It's summer here, and it's pool season. So, you know, my daughter and I are at the pool basically every day. And it's the beginning of the season, so the water is like still pretty cold, and the air is not super hot and humid every day. And she'll just jump right in, and then she's like, "Dad, come in the water." I'm like, "All right." And so like I step in waist deep, and I'm like, "Dang, this is cold." But I'm looking at her; she's swimming. She's already under. She's already got her goggles on. She's already coming out. And I'm like, "Oh, that's right. You just got to get in, man. You just got to get in, because it's not going to feel as good as you want it to until you're in it, until you're swimming, until you're like actually, you know, doing that work, so to speak." What about so I loved I'm sorry, like get a little bit nerdy on like formatting, and curious how much Matt and Tyler informed this. So everything except for the Marine Corps is lowercase.
Yeah.
And then you also kind of open up each section with some poetic prose, but still got prose. How did that format, both of those elements, come into play? Was that early? Was that late? Do you think about form as you're thinking about content?
Yeah, I thought it would look cool when I started writing my poetry. So if you go on to the Ashes of Homan, I think the first couple of poems I published have capitalization and punctuation in them. And then I thought, well, what if I don't do that? That might be neat. And then so that is just how I just was like, this might look cool. And that sort of became not that I have a brand, but like that became my thing. Is I just stopped using punctuation. I stopped using capitalization. And Keith and Tyler were on board. They were like, we love it. We think it's sweet. So the editing process, Matt did, I mean, fantastic. Just a great dude, man. I have nothing but great things to say about that guy. He took some lumps of coal and turned them into fucking diamonds. And that formatting, because I don't have a degree in English. I have a psychology degree. So I know how to write a paper, but poetry was something that I just tried and was like, okay, this seems to be working. And he really helped. The three of them really helped refine me within that form and formatting of a poem. Different elements of how something is structured, cutting out certain types of fluff, and then the introductory pieces as well. I thought would be, because there's a couple of them. There's the introductory pieces, and then there's one longer form prosaic piece called Haji SPN that I was like, it was a poem originally, but it sucked. I couldn't figure out how to get it right as a poem. And so I was like, oh, I'll just write it as prose and throw it in there. And then the introductory pieces are just a way to prime the reader, I think, so that they understand what they're getting into.
Yeah, a few threads there. I want to come back to the editing, but talking about the kind of form and the function together, you should not feel bad about like, I think this looks cool and I think this is cool, right? Like, I think there's ways that we need to figure out, like, aesthetic matters. And there are certainly, I believe, objective standards for aesthetics, in the universe, right? And then with those objective standards, there's room for interpretation, there's room for flair, there's room for personality, there's room, as long as you're kind of, Koki and I talked about this, right? There's the good, the true, and the beautiful. Mm-hmm. Those are the frameworks. And then within that, there's all these different kind of forms and functions that you can mess around and play with, that you're kind of staying within those boundaries. So, I mean, aesthetic matters. Having a brand, as you were saying, or a point of view or a perspective, or at least just a starting point to be like, I think this looks cool. This puts me in the right headspace to like write and create and do things because I like the way it looks. And then once I like the way it looks, then I can actually start to figure out what I'm actually saying.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, for me, I know you said we'll talk about cinema at the end, but for me, when I write, I try to, um, it's very visual for me. I try to paint as much of a picture as I can. And whether that is the lack of punctuation or capitalization, there's something that I'm trying to do that I feel like can grab the reader, and then in their imagination, in their mind, they can sort of play these pictures without the structure of the specific format of the poem, right? It doesn't have to match conventional ideas as long as it's true, as long as it's something that is evocative in the sense where it brings to mind what I'm hoping to say.
Yeah. I mean, the form and function go hand in hand. It's what I love about the screenplay format. You know, like that's what my is in. Is in screenwriting. That's my baseline foundational discipline.
That's cool.
Getting back into, obviously, having worked in commercial art for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Dabbling in indie film on the side, and now we're kind of getting back into that, where we're blending the kind of corporate and branded opportunities with indie films and documentaries and things like that. So writing a lot of treatments right now for like how a film series would come to life, or a branded content series would come to life, or how a commercial would come to life. And it's not conventional. It can't be, because you're painting with words, and in treatments you actually add visuals, whether it's keyframes or specific cinematography or lighting or editing references. But you're also painting with the words, because you can't just make a slide deck of pictures and say at the beginning, this is what it will look like, and leave it. You actually have to add words and copy and paint with those brushes as well. And then when you're writing a screenplay, right, like you use the white space on the page, and you intentionally don't punctuate, right? Like there's a lot of screenwriters who say that, it should be a very blue collar workman approach. A screenplay is not literature. A screenplay is, a framework for the other artists that work on the film to build their piece of it, and the director brings it all together. And Tarantino's like, oh, fuck that. My screenplays are a work of art. I'm not Tarantino. I don't think that my screenplays are a work of art, but I lean into that capacity of how do I use the white space on the page? How do I use punctuation in ways that aren't technically accurate, but still paint the picture of what the scene is supposed to be, or what the person might be thinking, right? Because in a screenplay, you don't have what you have in a novel, which is the internal thoughts, but you have to paint that picture, because the actor who's going to embody that character is still going to need to understand that character's motivation, to understand what choices they're going to have to make, right? So I love what you did that here. It's very, obviously I know that you're a film fan because we talk film all the time, but like I can see the pictures that you're painting with the work, not just the words, but also with the indentation and the repetition and the lack of punctuation. Like I found myself, there was a handful of poems that I would find myself reading multiple times, and I would like try a different reading cadence in my head. Like I would read it, and then I would say like, oh, what if I sped it up here? Like, what if I did this? There was the one with kill in parentheses, the parentheses. And I read that one once, and then I was like, let me speed read that and like really punctuate kill in my head as I was reading it. I don't know what that means. I don't know what I actually felt, but I just did it. And I'm like, oh man, this is working on a visceral level in a way that just without that punctuation, or with more technically correct punctuation, I don't think this poem would punch me in the face the way that it did.
Yeah. That there is, first off, so cool that you have a degree in screenwriting. I love that.
Yeah.
That made my day. I didn't know that. I think I look at the creative arts all the same, right? Where I don't look at it as much, and this is like the most woo that you'll ever hear me spout, but I look at it as like dictation, right? So whether it's God or the muse or inspiration, whatever you want to call it, this thing comes and it gives you an idea. And it's in a language that the reader doesn't understand. You can hear it, right? You can understand it. But the original the original message is something only for you. And then so it's not only dictation, but then it's also translation. So you have to then translate the idea in such a way that is clear to the reader, so that the everything is kosher, everything meshes, right? And I think that's why I do love cinema, because you cannot make a movie without a screenplay. You cannot make a movie without words. I mean, you can, but like, it's to have that structure of, this is the scene, this is the dialogue, this is the narrative structure, right? And so it's all, I look at it as literally something is giving me an idea that I understand. I can see the image perfectly. And with that poem, for the Marines listening, kill was like a response you'd give to any type of thing. Like they'd be like, go clean the head, kill. Like, for what? I don't know. But that's what you'd say. And so I have this image, right, of this dude who it's call and response. And so how do I make that? I have this idea. I know what that feels like because I'm a Marine. I can talk to other Marines and say, this is, kill. They're like, yeah, it's weird, whatever. But for everyone else, for my parents, for my neighbors, for anybody else in my life that, is not a Marine, well, how do I translate that to get them to feel that same emotion, right? And I think that's the idea. I think that's the only one that has punctuation. I think you got me.
Yeah, but no, it wasn't like a gotcha of like, oh, you used punctuation. Yeah. It's more of like you used punctuation in an unconventional way, right?
Right.
Like, that's not technically how you're supposed to use parentheticals, but you did it, right? And so that form added to the function of the poem. You talk about the muses, you talk about God, you talk about inspiration, right? Like, a true mystical experience is inexplicable, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you will experience and understand what it is that you're seeing, what it is that you're thinking, what it is that you're feeling, but you're never going to communicate it as clearly as it is in your head or in your heart or in your soul to an outside observer. And so when we make art, you're going to translate that as best as you can to show as best as you can what it is that you're thinking, what it is that you're feeling, what it is that you're seeing. And I think the gap that you're bridging is like sharing a piece of yourself, yes, but then also sharing a piece of this transcendental thing, kind of as best as you can through, in this case, words, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think that there is an element of, I don't like using that word, but there is an element of spirituality. There is this mystical thing that happens, right? And I don't quite know where it comes from. I mean, like, ideas will come in seemingly random. Like, they'll come in and it's like, well, where the hell did that come from? Like, what was going on in my day that, like, this image. So, like, the other day I had this idea of a woman driving her car. At first I didn't know it was a woman. At first I just had this idea of someone driving their car, and it's at nighttime, and the cars on the other side of the road, every time their headlights, sort of wash into her windshield, this memory, painful, traumatic memory from her childhood, like, boom, 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 keeps coming up. And then out of nowhere, I'm like, oh, and her daughter is missing. She's looking for her daughter. And I'm like, I'm in Virginia. It's sunny. I'm walking the dog. There's no reason for something that odd to pop. Where did that come from? And so, and it's like, well, then I have to. I used to get real weird about ideas, where I used to think that ideas were sentient, right? And that they would come to you, and if you didn't do anything with them, they would leave and they would go to somebody else that could better suit, to get the ideas out there. That they were like alive and could have agency, right? And
it's not a bad framework.
I mean, you know what? I don't know if it's true or not, but I think that there, because I'll see these little serendipitous synchronicities within, I'll be thinking of an idea, and then 10 months later, there's a movie out exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, what the fuck? How does that happen? Like, how does that happen? But I think getting it onto the page is, I mean, like I have a little notebook that I carry with me almost everywhere I go. And to you, if you were to pick it up and you were to open it up, you'd be like, this makes no sense. Right. But I think for me, it is, like I said, it's about dictation and then translation and then getting something onto the page that makes as close sense as you possibly can. Because you're right. You'll never, there's a poem in there. I don't remember what I called it. It might be, I don't remember the title. But it's the one about, ironically enough, driving down a road, right? And then there's this golden circle of pain. And this, it's me in the poem, but I am driving towards something inevitable. And there's a roundabout in the middle of the road, and I'm driving too fast and I can't stop. I can't slow down. That is probably the most, that's probably the deepest poem I have in there. Mm. And it is on the surface, it is about something else entirely. But for me, what I like to do is I like to take an idea or an emotion or a thought, and I like to abstract it so that I know what it is, and the reader could interpret it correctly if they read it carefully, but that it's not super obvious, right? Because if you write something obvious, then you're writing a technical manual, and you're like, hey, I went to Afghanistan and it was really hard. And then I came home and I was really sad. And there's my book of poetry. There you go. Right. But if you take those emotions and you sort of say like, well, what is that feeling? If that feeling was a person, what would it look like? If that feeling was an animal, what would it look like? If that feeling was a situation or environment or a place or a house or a tree or anything, what would it look like? What would it feel like? How would it feel if you were to take your experiences of a deployment and say, it is a house. Is it a haunted house? Is it dilapidated? Is it a big gaudy mansion? Is it, sort of that like creepy little weird cavernous maze from Stephen King's It, where there's like this big ugly monster? What does it look like? And then how does it feel to go inside that house? And so you could write that. We just did it, man. We just wrote a horror movie right here about this weird, but for us, we know it's about Afghanistan. For the reader or the viewer, whoever, they're like, wow, this is a really scary story. And the emotions are the same. It invokes the same feeling, but there's two stories going on. And that's really what I try to, I dig that. I dig like abstraction and trying to tell two things at once.
Yeah. And what I hear you describing is it's totally subjective and the reader can interpret it a million different ways, like however they want. It's more you're massaging your specific experiences it's where the universal and the specific meet each other, right? It's specific for you because you know what you're writing about, but you're allowing those universal thoughts and feelings to embody the work in order to reach somebody else in a way that they can touch and feel and think and smell and hear.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think that's exactly correct, because I'm not one of those types that likes to explain my work, right? I don't like ruining the surprise, right? Like if I handed you a Sudoku puzzle book for your birthday and was like, here you go, and you opened it up and it was all filled in, you'd be like, nah, that's kind of a shitty gift, right? It's like, for me, it's like, I know what I'm trying to say, and maybe you can figure it out. But if you can't, that's good too, because now instead of two stories, now there's a third layer that I wasn't even aware of. There's something else going on that you connect with that I wasn't even clocking. And that's, for me, that's where the fun is.
Right. But you know what it's about, right? It's not like it's not like you don't have an answer. It's just, you're not going to get the entire answer. Did you ever watch The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel on Amazon Prime?
No, but I saw, dude, I literally, talking about serendipity, I saw something about that on Instagram last night before I went to bed, where she was doing like a USO short, like
Yeah,
tour. And I was
yeah.
like, what is this show? Like, I want to watch this.
It's a phenomenal show. I lived in New York City, so there's the New York City elements. It's about a woman who takes up stand-up comedy and becomes a
Yeah.
stand-up comic. And like Rogan and others have talked about it, and then like, this is actually the best show about what it feels like to actually be a stand-up comic. I'm not a stand-up comic. I'm a fan, but I don't like know the ins and outs of that industry well. So that's a kind of a cool little side thing. But I think it's in the last season. I don't know how many seasons it ran. It's really, really good. But in the last season, her and her family go to see a play, and um, her dad and her mom go to see this play, and they're having. It's a beautifully written scene, and it's essentially. I don't want to say critiquing postmodernism in that it's like trying to take postmodernism down, but it's like critiquing postmodernism in the sense of like it is a philosophy that exists that a lot of people have, and a lot of people might even accidentally have today because they don't understand where it comes from or what it is. And so her dad has this like, he's a university professor and he's super smart. And, it's this play that was about, yes, on the surface, it's about a man and his dog. But really it's about the depth of these relationships and the onset of World War II and like all these like crazy things. Right. And then they're sitting at a restaurant after, and his wife, this woman's mom, is like, that's bullshit. I think it was just about the man and his dog. I think the play was just about like,
Yeah.
That's what I experienced. Like, he's like, no. You don't know the symbolism. You don't know all the ins and outs of all these things and like how, mythological and poetic language works. And then he like turns around the restaurant and he's like, oh my gosh, that's the playwright. And she's like, oh, I'm going to go ask him. And he's like, no, don't. So she walks up to the guy and she's like, hey man, what was your play about? And he was like, oh, it's about me and my dog. Like, I love my dog.
yeah. Yeah.
And she's, see? And it was like this cool scene because like neither of them are right, neither of them are wrong kind of thing. It was like this slice of life, portrayal of like how people consume art and how you can sometimes overthink it and overfeel it. But then there's also, it's not unimportant to feel it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I had an English teacher when I was in high school, and we had to do Midsummer's Night Dream. Yeah. And so we read through the whole play, and then we had to act it out. That was Puck, in case any theater nerds listening. Yeah, that was the beginning and the end of my acting career. I wanted to be an actor when I was a kid, and then I was like, oh, I kind of just like genuinely suck at this, and I don't think I could possibly get better. Yeah. But I remember we had to write like a little essay on what we thought it was about, and take themes from the play and explain what we thought Shakespeare was trying to write. And I remember I got like a pretty bad grade because my teacher didn't agree with me, and I was like, still a kid, so you don't know how to stand up for yourself really. And I was like, okay, that kind of sucks. And then it's like, well, he's dead. Like, Shakespeare's dead. So there's no way anybody alive, there's no way anybody could definitively say this is exactly what it's about. It is all completely subjective. They might be right. Here's the deal. Like, they might be correct, but how could you tell? And I think that's the beauty of art, is it becomes something, and it can evolve and change over time. And again, to bring it back to film, there's a really great movie called Under the Silver Lake. It's an A24 movie. I don't know if you've seen it. If you have, you should. Yeah. So I won't say what I think it's about, right? Because I don't want it to, again, color what you see. But I recommended it to a friend of mine, a Marine Corps buddy, who's also very creative and artistic. And he and I had a very lengthy conversation, and he thought it was about something completely different than I did. And he had his reasons and I had my reasons, and they're both valid and they're both sound, and they're both like, this is why I think this movie is about X. And it all makes sense, but it's completely different. And it's like only art can do that. You can only do that with, again, because if you take a technical manual, unless it's like the Bible, right? But I think the Bible is a work of art, and that's why it's subjective, right? It's, if you take a technical manual, right, like you got MCDP1 warfighting. Warfighting is about warfighting. That is what it's about. There is no like hidden, esoteric, mystical, new age gobbledygook that is in warfighting. But if you took a novel about that book, then it can explode and become whatever it is. And I think, like I said, that's, for me, that's where the fun is like putting something out and like see what people think. I don't know.
Yeah, no doubt. So there's a couple of things, a couple of quotes I have here. I love the DD-214 poem. You have a line in there that says, "I'm finally free and that's enough, but saying goodbye was pretty rough."
Yeah.
That one to me feels kind of very much like what the collection is about, right? Like on the note of what we were just talking about, right? Which is like wrestling with the complexities of service and identity, and like, I'm finally free of this thing that I don't want to do anymore, because that's the reason that I'm moving on and saying goodbye to this thing. That goodbye is pretty rough, because it is, not all I've ever known, but a pretty significant part of my life. And I think about that all the time, because like I said, I got out 15 years ago coming up in October. And I've ebbed and flowed with that, right? Where I look back, I'm like, man, what a great chunk, what a great 4 years of my life. And then other times I'm like, man, what would have happened if I would have gone 20? Man, what would have happened if I would have made it through selection? What would have happened? All these different things. And saying goodbye to that, which you have to continuously do over the course of the rest of your life, is rough. But you're also free of it, and that is enough. What, how do you think about that? Like, now that you've completed the collection and you look back on this chunk of your life serving in the reserves, how do you think about it, and how do you feel about it, having completed this work, which is a punctuation mark, so to speak?
Yeah.
Period.
That's a good question. I think I think it's very similar to what you're describing, right? Because it's not like it ever goes away. It's sort of like a breakup. It's sort of like you're breaking up with the Marine Corps, and you're like, oh, my toxic, abusive ex, but we had great sex, like that's what the Marine Corps is. And so you think about those fond memories of like, man, that was really cool, but it also like really fucking sucked. But I miss her, but I hate her, but I miss her. And it's like this back and forth of like, I think my love of the Marine Corps will never go away. I will miss it every day. But what the Marine Corps provides, which is community and stability and discipline and order and structure and fitness and all of the things the Marine Corps provides, I can do that now. I could do that. I'm a part of PB Abate when I have free time. That's a community, and it's a community of like-minded individuals. I have a gym in my shed that way, right? That I can go work out in and give that physical discipline, that physical fitness. I could structure my life as if I was still in the Marine Corps. Now, obviously, I'm not going to do that because I'm not insane, but like all of the things that it provides, I still do and still have. All of my friends that I served with, I'm still extremely close with. They are my best friend. They are my brothers, right? Like I was just at a wedding for one of them up in New Jersey. So it's hard to explain. It's like it goes away, but then it doesn't. It goes away. You're not in it, but it's still a part of you. Like the joke I'd always make is you can take the man out of the Marine Corps, but you can never take the Marine Corps out of the man. And I think you can just substitute Marine Corps for whatever branch of service it is, right? It doesn't ever really go away, but then it does. And so there is this weird sort of, what would be the word? like a limbo. It's like you're in limbo, but it's not painful. You're not, it can be. I don't want to diminish people's experiences. It can be painful. It can be very disorienting. It can be extremely difficult. For me now, it is not. And I've come to accept it's again, the best thing I could say is it's like going through a breakup. And you have to sort of move through that and get to a place where you're like, I accept that I'm no longer a part of this thing. And I accept that it will always be a part of me. And both of those things are true. I'm not a part of it, but it's a part of me. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And then I can move on.
Yeah. You have to mourn it. You have to grieve it. You have to put it in its context, right? Like the
that's
experience
right.
you had need to be put in the right context for you to continue to exist moving forward. Like there's 3 other lines I pulled, not from that same poem, but they're thematically similar. Excuse me. One of them was, "It all seemed too much and somehow never enough," which rings totally true for me and my experiences. And then the other one is, "The good times had come and gone, and the best days were yet to come." You chose to use the word "and" there instead of the word "but," right? Like eventually you would say, "Oh, the good times had come and gone, but the best days are yet to come." No. The good times had come and gone, and the best days were yet to come, right? Like that, like future past tense, and you're connecting them instead of dividing them, right?
Exactly.
Like that I think is like you've probably heard me talk about it, or we've talked about it. Like my wife, when I started this podcast, she was like, "For the love of God, please do not make being a veteran your entire identity. It is a
yeah.
who were and who you are, and it informs a lot of the way that you live and work, but it cannot be your entire identity." And I, obviously like intellectually agreed, and I even emotionally agreed to a certain extent, but 153 episodes into this podcast, I look back and I'm like, man, what wisdom she had to be like, you could very easily get sucked into this thing and not ever like move past it. And so that's all this podcast is an exercise to do what you and I are trying to talk about right now, which is put the experiences in their proper context so that we can understand how they inform us, but to make sure that they don't define us, right? And I think that's danger, is when it becomes a definition instead of information. Then we're screwed, because we're not living in the past, we're not living in the future, we're just like floating.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Because, I'd even said it, I'm very like intentional when I say, and that's okay, right? I don't like to, because if we're dividing the experiences in half, what you're saying is there's a contrast. This terrible thing happened,
right?
But it's all right. Whatever. Ignore it. Well, it's like, no, it happened. And the fact that it happened is okay. Right. And I think like, while I was writing this, I had just begun my undergrad in psychology, because there's a poem in there. I think it's 2021-08-16. And that's about a friend of mine who committed suicide. And after he died, he was like the last person you'd expect and all the typical stereotypes. And I'm not going to crack open that egg on a podcast, but I decided I'm going to do something about veterans' mental health, because I have more friends in the ground than I care to admit, and they're all stateside. And, I never lost anyone overseas. And so I was like, I'm going to do something about this. And so I went and got my degree and started pursuing, a degree towards eventually becoming a therapist. And as I was going through my healing journey myself, I was also writing these poems, and I was going through the ups and the downs of pain and suffering and joy and bliss and all of these different things. And that is the human experience. You have to have both. Both of them are the human experiences together, right? It's not heads or tails, or heads but there's tails, or you have heads and you have tails. You have the good and the bad. You have the sweet and the bitter. You have the chaotic and the ordered. It's all one. It's all oneness. Maybe this is the second woo-woo thing that I'll say. It's all oneness. And that is what makes the human experience. And that's okay, right? Like it's okay that you have a bad day, because everyone has bad days, right? Everyone, I mean, that's my Disney kid growing up, right? Like Hannah Montana, everyone has bad days, right? I was going to burst out a song, but no one would listen to the podcast after that. So we'll spare that. But it's like, it's okay that we can go through that. And yeah, we put the past behind us. And now at this point in my life, like you said, you're a dad, you got another baby on the way. Like to me, a family unit, like that will be the most interesting thing I do in my life. That will be the most not the Marine Corps.
Without question.
Right? Not the Marine Corps is over. This is the most interesting thing. And I'm a civilian now. So like maybe that's what I make my life about. Maybe I make my life about being a dad or a husband or whatever. Maybe I wrote a book. That's interesting. We can make my life about that, right? And I think moving forward and sort of putting it, you don't glorify it, you don't vilify it, you don't. It's not like you're a bro vet who goes down to the VFW and gets drunk and talks about the good old days all the time. You did it. Cool. Great. There's people that listen to this that have done way more than I have ever done. That's great. Put that in its context. We put it on a shelf. There's my experience. I did this thing. Everyone's going to have a different experience, whether you're an admin tech in the Air Force or, Delta Force CAG operator, right? Like everyone's got their shit and everyone's done something, and you put it in its context and then you move on.
Dude, this is what breaks my heart the most, is that people think that the adventure is over, and the adventure is just beginning.
Oh,
and
yeah.
There are plenty of people. I served with a lot of parents in the Air Force. I served with a lot of people that were married and had kids. And obviously their deployment experiences were very different than mine. But for people like us who served at a relatively young age, like while single, and then like you get like, I cannot evangelize harder for getting married and having kids, because what you just said is spot on. Like the month that we're experiencing right now with my wife getting ready to give birth to our second child, while we have a 5-year-old, while we move her room, while we get all the things from the registry and we get the nursery ready, and we're getting ready. We're in summer school, going to the pool, getting ready for kindergarten. And we're trying to live the life that we've known up to this point. But now a fourth person is going to be in our home. But like as a dad, the first time I was excited, but didn't have any clue. And now I look at my 5-year-old daughter who's in that perspective. Like she's excited to have a little sister, but she has no idea how much her life is about to change. And that the first 5 years of her life, she's never going to get those back, because for the rest of her life, she's going to have a sibling. And so it's not just going to be about her, and it's not just going to be about the 3 of us. It's going to be about the 4 of us, and then the 2 of them. And you kind of all these different ways of living. And I'm not speaking from experience because I don't have a second kid yet, but I'm looking forward to it in a way that I didn't look forward to having one child, because now I have a little bit of context. There's nothing. Yeah, there's nothing more interesting. There's nothing more adventurous. There's nothing more exciting than having a family and being a part of a family, a healthy one, right? My brother and I are 6 years apart. My daughter and her sister are going to be about 5.5 years apart. My brother and I come from a divorced family. And so when I think about he and I are very close, really, really close. But there was a period in our lives where we didn't even see each other every other weekend because he was on a different schedule than I was on a different schedule. And so there was that period of time where we actually didn't even really know each other that well. But I look at my daughter and her sister being about the same, length of years apart from each other. And I'm like, oh, this is great, because you're going to have all the best of my experiences with my brother and none of the worst, because we are not divorced. Like that is not, you know what I mean? Like we have a strong, healthy, happy marriage, and we work on that. And so like you're welcoming a sister into this family that's like very different than the one that I came from. But even using the metaphor that we're talking about here, I'm not ungrateful for the childhood that I had. I'm not ungrateful for those experiences because they
Sure.
are informing how my wife and I are doing this one. And but
Sure.
please hear me. We make tons of mistakes with each other and with our kids. Like, we're not perfect. I'm not trying to like paint some undue picture of perfection, but
Right.
it's adventure that we're talking about. That is like that is the absolute, it's the best thing in my life.
Yeah. I mean, I think I mean, the veteran made brand, you made children. There you go. Like, that's it. Right. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like, that's it. What
Yeah.
else, what other thing could you create? Right. I think that's beautiful.
You'll appreciate this because now that she's like old enough, like the last couple of years, I've taken her to Memorial Day events or Veterans Day
Yeah.
events, things like that. And she was pretty young, and she would like behave and stand still and be respectful and all that stuff. But now that she's older, she's starting to get like a little bit more context, and she's met, other veterans that I've worked with or that I've like been around different projects and things like that. And so she knows I was an airman. And now she's met Marines, she's met soldiers,
Cool.
she's met sailors,
Yeah.
she's met all these people. And so like now her thing is like, she actually let go of this recently and has come to terms with the fact that I was an airman, but she was like visibly upset that I wasn't a soldier.
Yeah.
And one of my SF buddies, like, dude, he loved it. He was just dogging on me so hard. He's like, yeah, that's right, Isla. Your dad joined the wrong branch. He should have been, these basically
That's
all but
great.
said I was pussy. You know what I mean? And it was
Right.
like,
Right.
but it was like actually really cool for her to see that kind of interaction and like that kind of thing, and then to like wrestle with it in her head. She's like, well, what did you do? I was like, well, I loaded bombs. And she's like, well, what did the bombs do? I'm like, well, the airplanes dropped them onto buildings and onto bad guys. I haven't told her about civilians yet. She's not that, but like she will, as she gets older, start to understand those elements of what I wrestled with my service as a part of the GWAT, of being like, yeah, you get in and you're like, oh yeah, these bombs kill bad guys. And then you actually learn like, oh wow, actually these bombs did other things too. And like, that's not great. And we all kind of wrestle with these different things, and then bringing children into the world and putting the experiences into context for yourself first is what you have to do in order to put them in context for your kids.
Yeah, that's right.
That's something I wasn't anticipating, but it's just kind of happening naturally. And it's like everything else. Like what I do for myself informs what I do for my family, informs what my family does for me. And like that's just an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I had a very long, arduous healing process, right? And there's a lot of moral injury that you recognize, I think, after the fact. And we can be idealistic and like, yeah, fuck those guys, like they're the bad guys, let's go kill them. And it's like, well, yeah, okay, let's just flip the script like maybe just let's flip it for just a second. Like, what would you do if it was the middle of the night and someone kicked in your door asking where your commanding officer is? Where's your CO at? Someone kicks your door in, says, where's this dude? Points a gun at you. Your wife's in bed. Your kids are in the next room. Are you going to fight back?
Yep.
Would you be wrong for fighting back? If
Yep.
you got killed, would you want the enemy in scare quotes? Would you want them to celebrate like, yeah, this fucking pussy, I killed it, right? Like, we look at war as justified because we are the ones doing it and we are the ones that came home. And I think that there's this sort of other part of the journey where it's like, you come home, you put your experiences in a box and you don't deal with it for a while until it forces you to reconcile with it. Right. And that's where I think a lot of veterans, that's where those critical points are, because we're taught bottle it up. You go to medical, you're a pussy. If you go to medical, you are a coward. If you, are you hurt or are you injured? Well, it's
Right.
like I was injured, right? Like it doesn't matter what you do. By definition, right? I mean, the drill instructor's creed in boot camp for the Marine Corps, I don't know what it is in the Air Force. I will never forget this as long as I live. They looked me in the eyes and screamed in my face and told me they were going to brainwash me. And it worked because they said, I will indoctrinate them with love of core and country. That is injurious. Like whether you want to get into like the nuance of the, whatever, there is a level of psychological impact that has that you have to then reconcile with. Right.
Yeah.
And I think the average veteran coming out of service doesn't think about that. They think about, oh, we dropped bombs on civilians. I have to deal with that. You do. I kicked in a door and shot someone in the face. I got to deal with that. You do. I sat behind a desk and typed, forms all day and got carpal tunnel and, but I really wish I could have been on the front lines. And so I feel guilty that I wasn't there. I have to deal with that. And you do. But there's this other level of just day one of boot camp. You have to deal with what happens. Like you become a different person. You go from being a civilian to being whatever your branch of service is, whatever your MOS, you change. And there is something that you have to then renegotiate. There's a reordering and a restructuring that if you don't do, you will be the bro vet who just, lives in the glory days until you die from alcohol poisoning, right? Like that is what, like, and that is sort of where I feel like my new mission is. Because when I first joined, I was always very creative. I had always written, I had always, like I said, loved film and cinema. I'd written screenplays. I had, made short films as a kid. I'd written stories. And when I first joined, I was like, oh, that's dumb now. I'm a Marine and I'm a grunt. Like, that's lame. I'll put that part aside and become this big, tough fucking Marine. That's what I am. And it's like, you can do both. You can be both. You can be who you are and be in service. And then when you get out, you at least have who you are to fall back on.
Yeah.
Because if you make it your whole life, then you have nothing when you get out.
Yeah. And that's the cost of not putting these things in proper context. And it's not binary, right? Like what you're describing, the drill instructor's creed in the Marine Corps, like is necessary in order to create Marines. And so like there is an element of that where you're like, yeah, this is my identity right now in this current station of my life, in this current phase with this current mission in front of me, this is my identity. If I was thinking about the nuance while I was doing my job at Bagram Airfield in Afghanistan, I would not have done my job as well as I possibly could have. But now with the freedom of separation, the freedom of 15 to 19 years removed, right, from when I first went in the Air Force, well, now I have the ability to put those things in their proper context. And it's necessary for me now to put those things in their proper context because that moral injury needs to be healed, right? And that is an ongoing process. It's not binary. You don't just like put a Band-Aid, you don't stitch it up. It doesn't scar and heal and then you move on. It is something that you need to consistently and appropriately re-engage with to check on yourself, to ensure that you're moving forward and iterating forward the way that you want to, as you define it for yourself, not the way the Marine Corps or the Air Force define it for you at that acute moment.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that that's, sort of bringing it back to the book, I think that that's the general idea, right? Is it's like, whether you're a reservist or whether you're an admin tech in the Air Force or you're a CAG dude, so you're gonna go away. There's a part of you that leaves for a period of time. You become. There's a poem in there. I think it's titled "You Become Something Else." But if not, it might be called something else.
This is one of the benefits. I'm a physical guy. I like to have This is one of the benefits. What did you say you think it's called?
I think it's called "You Become Something Else," but I think that's the first line of the poem. So if you
search it,
yeah, dude, Command F that shit.
Become Something Else, page 25. Look at this technology, bro. Yeah, it's titled "You Become Something Else" as well. It's on page 4 of my copy. Yeah.
Yeah,
and this is what I talked about where it has the indentation. You use the white space really well. Keep going.
Yeah. So the idea with that is like, it doesn't matter, right, what you do in service, right? You become something else. And I think that that is like, that's the hardest thing for most people to recognize, is that you do change, and it's fine. Okay. You joined, and maybe you joined for, the Star Spangled Boner idealism of America. Fine. Great. But when you join, for whatever reason, whether it's to get education benefits or health benefits or whatever it is, you want to go kill bad guys or whatever, you join for whatever reason, you change and transform. And then the thing I say all the time, and this might be something you can resonate with, is that the military, by the numbers in boot camp, teaches you how to put on every piece of uniform exactly the correct way. And if you don't, you will get physically punished. If your laces are not perfect, your laces on your shoes, they're not perfect, you will get punished. They teach you by the numbers how to put the uniform on, and then they do fuck all to help you take it off. And I think for me, what helped in truth is leaning into that creativity. And like I said earlier with that analogy of the house, what does it feel like to embody those emotions? What would it look like if I could see it, if I could touch it? And then I'm just going to verbal diarrhea on the page, and maybe it'll make sense. And I think that it did for me. It helped in its context. And I would encourage, I think writing is such a useful skill, but such a useful skill for veterans to, one, stoke that creative fire, right? Because I think everyone has the ability to create, right? Everyone has that ability inherently. So it'll help you get better at that. And then two, it'll help you sort of reorder things and restructure things. And how do there's a problem now. There's like all these words on a page. How do I make sense of that? And let me make it make sense. And I think that is one of the things that really helped me a lot.
So you actually brought it back to the one thread from the book that we didn't pull on, which I wanted to pull on, which was the editing relationship with Matt, right? You mentioned, right, like vomiting onto a page and then working it, putting the coal onto the page and working it into a diamond. You mentioned you don't have to name the poems if you don't want to, but just curious, like you mentioned earlier in the conversation that like Matt was a great editor because you put some shit on the page and then he helped you kind of shine it up.
Yeah.
What was it like as somebody who had only ever put things out on Instagram before and edited his own work? What was it like to work with an editor? What was it like to work with Matt, who's a master at the craft, and work with another DRC author?
Yeah, he really, he made it as painless as possible because, I don't know where the quote comes from. I think it might be Hemingway, but I really don't know, nor do I care. It's like, kill your darlings, right? Like the idea of you have to kill your darling. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that because there's that one poem I had mentioned about the roundabout. He had edited it. And this is no slight to him. He had edited it in a way that took out the meaning that I wanted. And I was like, do you think it would work with this stanza put in? Because that's kind of the point. And without telling him what the point was, because I didn't want to ruin it, right? But like, this is kind of the point. And he was like, well, and I ended up leaving it in. I think it still works. But there was others that he, in the best way possible, in the most constructive way possible, took a coal and made it into a diamond. There's one called Oil Tanks that he took from a very average poem, I think, into something that I was like, I can't believe that I wrote that, let alone like that I'm looking like and it's something that like only can come from an editor of his caliber. I mean, he was just as painless to work with as possible. And took a lot of shit and made it better. I mean, in truth, I was very scared. I was like, fuck, he's going to think this sucks. Like he's going to be like, all right, on page 1, it sucks. And then at page 2, it sucks a little bit. And then page 3, you fucking suck. I'm like, ah, damn. But he was, I mean, really on the level. A lot of general editing stuff that you take out this word, put this word in, you spelled that word wrong, you idiot, you know, like that sort of stuff. Whatever. Yeah. But the ones that he deconstructed, and there's a couple in that collection that he actually took out of the manuscript, or he recommended I take out, and I was like, yeah, I agree. So, all of his corrections, I was like, yeah, man, I'm on board. I think it makes it make way more sense.
Yeah, I mean, what you're describing is a relationship, right? Like, it's easy to be like, oh, this editor got hired to change my work, right? And
Yeah.
what I hear you describing is a conversation about the collection as a whole, as about individual poems, where they fit on the page, like how they work, whether or not they do or don't work in the collection or on the page, right? It's like this, it's a give and it's a take. It's not like you're working with each other to finalize and make publishable all these thoughts and feelings that you have.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's how would I describe it? It's less like a job interview, right? Where you kind of, you kind of feel put on the spot and you got to like answer all these questions correctly. And oh my God, I hope I don't mess up. That's what I thought it was going to be like, sitting down like, hey, let's, whatever, sell me your book type of deal. Like, and it was very much a conversation of like, yeah, this was really good. This was really good. This was okay. I would do this. And at every edit, he was great to be like, yeah, but if you feel like I'm wrong, man, you stick to your guns. And there was really, like I said, there was really only one change that I felt like I had to be like, no, I think I'm going to keep that part in. And the rest of it was a very smooth process. The whole publishing thing too, I guess I could speak to a little bit. That whole process, it is very daunting because like I didn't know what I'm getting into, and but the guys, I mean, they, like I said, they made it as painless as possible. And they're busy with, this is not their job, right? Like this is the second thing that they do. So, they were good at being communicative when they needed to be and keeping me informed. Hey, this is what we're doing, and and hey, your book's going to be this time next year, and so on and so forth. And then, Matt, the editing process, and all right, we'll get you set up for success. And I really feel like I was taken care of throughout the whole way. I mean, they're just great dudes. I got nothing but good things to say.
They're the best. All right, we're getting up to be on time here. We talked a little bit of film. We'll definitely have to do it again and just do an episode dedicated to film. But Steve, where can folks find you? Where can folks find your work? We'll obviously collaborate on social media and post everything out in the show notes. But where do you want to drive traffic?
Yeah, my Instagram handle, my personal page, I do not post on it, full discretion. I post weird stories about things I find interesting. So if you like shit posting, that's Uneven Steven, I think 03 on Instagram. And then my poetry page proper is The Ashes of Helmand on Instagram. And then the book's available at Dead Reckoning Collective. So I think everyone by now should be following them if they're listening to you. So
yeah,
if not, go follow them.
We're recording this episode while they're doing pre-orders, but when this episode airs, the book will be published. So we'll link that out and drive traffic and hopefully sell you some books. People can go check it out and buy it. Steve, to end each episode of the podcast, I ask an open-ended question. What's on your heart and your mind for our community right now? Could be a piece of advice, something you want to get off your chest, or something you want to reiterate that we've talked about today. But Steve, what's on your heart? What's on your mind?
Wow. That is a really good question. I would say that, I mean, not to make this sort of topical and maybe outdated for future listeners, but the current state of affairs of the world, I think, has myself and presumably other veterans maybe questioning or feeling disillusioned or feeling emotions going through certain things. And I would say that, number one, if you're feeling any type of way, go call your buddies or reach out to somebody. And two, I think that the best way to overcome fear is, man, just, I think, standing up to that fear in whatever way you think is the best. Whether that's, again, I'm not trying to draw a line in the sand here, but if it's political activism or spiritual activism or sort of internal fortitude, whatever you feel like you need to do to fortify yourself against the horrors of the world, yeah, do that. But definitely, if you're feeling some type of way, call somebody. And if you can't call anybody, shoot me a message on Instagram and I'll give you my number. You can call me.
Yeah. Get off social media. Go touch grass.
That's right. Touch grass, dude. That's the phrase I was looking for the whole time. It's like, what's the kid saying?
Get some sun
That's it.
on the skin. Go touch
That's
grass.
right.
Go jump in a cold pool.
Yeah, man.
Control what you can control. All right, brother.
That's right.
Appreciate your time. Appreciate your energy.
Appreciate you,
your words. Appreciate the growing friendship here, man. Awesome to get
Yes,
to know
sir.
you. And yeah, excited to put this out.
Yes, sir. I am too. Appreciate
Cheers.
you, man.